Did you miss me?
Hell no, to the no, no, no.
With Newcastle United in a rough patch in form, Cristiano Ronaldo has actually revealed something huge. So from revealing what it is, we'll also reveal the dark truth that can change Newcastle's season for the better.
Are you sure about that?
As per, join us as we'll break it all down, and it's also better late than never, so...
How are you, my friend? I just sent you this message to wish you happy birthday. Okay, my friend? Take care.
Let's go.
So starting off, the recent Cristiano Ronaldo situation in Saudi Arabia has...
I'm going to start with Cristiano Ronaldo, whose future in Saudi Arabia is in doubt. After going on strike, would you believe?
The situation in Saudi Arabia has done more than create headlines. It has exposed how public investment fund-owned clubs actually function in the transfer market. Ronaldo's frustration emerged during the winter window when Al Hilal, a direct title rival also controlled by public investment fund, were actively reinforced, while his own club, Al Nassr, were not. During that window, Al Hilal added 7 players, including a young signing from Ligue 1, 2 midfield reinforcements, the defender Pablo Mari, and later moved to bring in Karim Benzema on a short-term deal. In contrast, Al Nassr signed just 2 players, with one coming from the Iraqi league, with no major investment to address squad gaps during a title race. What made the situation revealing was not Ronaldo's reaction, but the pattern it exposed. 2 clubs, under the same ownership structure, operated very differently in the same window. One was strengthened aggressively, the other was left to cope. This shattered the assumption that shared ownership guarantees equal backing. The Ronaldo issue showed that the public investment fund ownership comes with selective investment, not automatic support, especially when decisions are time-sensitive. That same pattern feels uncomfortably familiar for Newcastle United. Newcastle, also public investment fund-owned, entered the January window with a squad stretched by injuries across defense, midfield, and attack. Yet despite the need, the club made 0 senior first-team signings. No defenders were brought in, no midfield cover arrived, and no attacking depth was added. The message was restraint: manage the situation rather than intervene. At the same time, clubs outside the public investment fund structure acted decisively. Manchester City, for example, responded to injuries by signing multiple reinforcements, including players brought in from other Premier League sides and European leagues, ensuring their squad depth remained intact. The contrast is stark. One club protects momentum, the other accepts risk, and this difference cannot be explained by ambition alone. The Ronaldo episode suggests these limitations may be structural rather than situational. If a public investment fund-owned club in a league without strict financial caps can feel undersupported during a title race, it raises valid concerns about Newcastle operating in the Premier League's far stricter regulatory environment. The question becomes whether caution is driven purely by PSR or by ownership-level risk management and optics. For Newcastle supporters, this is not about demanding excessive spending. It is about timing, backing, and intent. The Saudi League situation has pulled the curtain back on how the public investment fund manages its football assets. What it shows is that ownership alone does not guarantee flexibility in the transfer market, and when reinforcement is delayed or denied, the consequences are felt on the pitch. Beyond transfers, another issue quietly costing Newcastle United is the underutilization of the academy and young recruitment pipeline. Over the last few years, Newcastle have actually been proactive in identifying and signing young talent, yet very little of that talent has translated into first-team minutes or meaningful development pathways. The problem is no longer recruitment, it is usage. Take Alfie Harrison, signed from Manchester City's academy. He arrived with strong technical credentials and experience in a top development system, yet never received a clear pathway into the senior squad. Instead of gradual integration or a carefully planned loan, his development stalled, and now he is reportedly set to leave on a free transfer, representing a total loss of investment and planning. That is not a failure of talent, it is a failure of structure. The same pattern applies to Garang Kuol. When Newcastle signed him, he was one of the most exciting young prospects in world football, fresh off a breakout World Cup performance with Australia and attracting attention across Europe. Instead of building on that momentum, his loan moves lacked clarity and continuity. He was sent out, struggled for minutes, and returned with development slowed rather than accelerated. Another prime example is Antonio Cordero, whose development is now in question. Despite arriving from Malaga with significant hype, his initial move to KBC Westerlo in Belgium resulted in minimal minutes during the first half of the season, where he struggled to break into the team, making just 7 appearances and totaling only 87 minutes with no goals or assists. After being recalled and loaned out again to Cadiz in January, his rhythm remains disrupted. Then there is Trevan Sanusi, a player signed with clear intent and high expectations, even described internally as an Alan Saint-Maximin type profile. Pace, flair, unpredictability. Exactly the type of player Newcastle lacked depth in during injury crises. Yet he, like others, has remained on the margins, never trusted in competitive senior moments, even when circumstances arguably demanded it. At Lorient, he has recorded 0 League One minutes and has yet to make his top-flight debut in France. His one bright spot came in the Coupe de France, where he scored a goal and provided an assist in a 7-0 win against AS Gauzier, but he has otherwise been limited to Lorient's reserve side in French 4th tier. This is where comparison with elite clubs becomes uncomfortable. Arsenal, for example, recently structured a loan for Ethan Nwaneri to Marseille that reportedly included a £4 million loan fee, with clauses that reduced the cost depending on minutes played. That is smart development strategy. The parent club is financially protected, the buying club is incentivized to play the youngster, and the player benefits from real competitive exposure. Everyone wins. Newcastle's loans, by contrast, often lack performance safeguards, resulting in players sitting on benches abroad while their progress stagnates. The issue becomes even more damaging when combined with injuries and contract uncertainty in the senior squad. With players like Tino Livramento dealing with injuries and uncertainty over long-term renewal, Newcastle should be leaning more heavily on internal options. Yet academy players are not being backed with trust, even in low-risk situations. At right back, for example, Leo Shahar has shown promise and composure beyond his age, but the club continues to rely heavily on Kieran Trippier, now 35, whose physical limitations are increasingly being targeted by opponents. In the recent defeat against Brentford, Trippier was repeatedly isolated and exposed, a tactical weakness Brentford clearly identified and exploited. Against Brentford with a 6.3 rating, while Trippier managed a massive 70 touches, completed 40 out of 45 passes, indicating he is still a focal point for Newcastle's build-up, he also lost the ball 13 times and was dribbled past twice. His crossing, usually his greatest weapon, saw only a 40% success rate, 2 out of 5. Even in physical battles, he only won 2 out of 5 ground duels and 2 out of 5 aerial duels, and being dribbled past twice suggesting that the club should look toward a younger future. That does not mean Trippier is no longer valuable, but it does highlight the risk of over-reliance without transitional planning. This is where the academy should matter most. When transfers are restricted and injuries pile up, young players should not just exist as future assets, they should be functional depth. Newcastle are currently caught in the worst of both worlds, unable to sign when needed and unwilling to trust what they already have. The concern then is systemic. Newcastle are investing in young talent, but without a coherent development and integration strategy, that investment is leaking value. Players leave for free, confidence drops, and the first team suffers from a lack of options. In a club already constrained in the transfer market, failing to maximize the academy is not just inefficient, it is costly. Then another growing issue at Newcastle United is the loss of a clear football identity. Every successful side in the Premier League has one. Arsenal play controlled, positional football built on patterns and rotations. Liverpool thrive in chaos, intensity, transitions, second balls. Newcastle, however, increasingly feel undefined. Since Alexander Isak's long absence and disrupted rhythm, the team's attacking identity has faded, and what remains often looks improvised rather than intentional. When Newcastle do win games, it rarely feels like the result of a dominant system. Instead, victories are often driven by individual brilliance, moments from Bruno Guimaraes, flashes of quality from attackers, or isolated spells where someone produces something special. Even earlier in the season, when results were going Newcastle's way, many fans admitted the performances were unconvincing. The warning signs were there. Winning while playing poorly is not sustainable, and eventually, luck runs out. That moment now feels like it has arrived. The absence of a true creative number 10 is central to this problem. Newcastle struggle to connect midfield to attack, especially against compact sides. Without a player who can consistently receive between the lines, dictate tempo, and unlock defenses, The attack becomes predictable. Recruitment has not helped. Targets like Elanga, Ramsey and others have shown moments but have largely been misses rather than solutions, offering pace without control or creativity without consistency. Against Brentford, this lack of identity and structure was clear. Newcastle's central striker was isolated for long stretches, barely involved in build-up, and feeding on scraps rather than service. Winning duels, linking play, and creating chances were all problems, not because of individual failure alone, but because the system did not support the role. This was particularly concerning given that Brentford entered the season weaker on paper, having lost key players and their manager in the summer. Concerns also extend into midfield, particularly around Sandro Tonali. Reports from David Ornstein suggesting that Tonali was the subject of potential January interest, even if later downplayed by his agent, matter because of the source's reliability. Where there is smoke, there is often fire. Since then, Tonali's performances have dipped. Against Brentford, the 25-year-old failed to win an aerial duel, completed just one tackle, missed all 4 cross attempts, and recorded only 67% accuracy on long passes, according to SofaScore. While one game does not define a player, the timing is worrying. Newcastle must avoid repeating the Isak situation, where uncertainty lingered and planning felt reactive rather than proactive. If Tonali is likely to leave in the summer, the club needs to accept that reality early. He is under a long-term contract, meaning Newcastle can command a significant fee, but only if the situation is handled correctly. Allowing clarity now gives the club time to plan a replacement and gives the player the mental freedom to perform at his best for the remainder of his stay. Handled properly, this benefits everyone. Tonali stays committed, Newcastle extract full value, and the squad transition is managed with foresight rather than panic. Ignoring the issue risks underperformance, unrest, and a rushed rebuild later. Ultimately, the burden of all these issues, recruitment limits, academy stagnation, identity loss, and player uncertainty, has fallen on Eddie Howe. And that is what makes this so difficult. Howe has transformed the club, restored belief, and delivered nights fans will never forget. But football moves quickly. Sometimes a project reaches a natural ceiling, not because of failure, but because it needs new energy. A reset does not mean disrespect. A new coach could bring a defined identity, clearer attacking structure, and a fresh way to unlock players like Ramsey or Elanga. We have seen it elsewhere. Even at clubs mocked for chaos, change has at times brought clarity. Newcastle must now decide whether to persist with a system that feels increasingly stretched, or whether the time is approaching for new ideas to realign ambition with performance. But tell me, what do you think?